We're back with Captain Harold DeMarrero, River Stories Volume 6. Captain wants to talk a little bit more about his Coast Guard career. Hopefully we'll get to the Delta Queen soon enough. So I want to personally know how in the hell you ever become captain on the Delta Queen. We're back in the Coast Guard for right now, so take it away, Captain.
Actually, this was before I got to be captain on the Delta Queen. You know, I was 35 years old when I joined the Coast Guard, so I was one of the older officers in there. And I had a lifetime of experience in the barge industry. But every now and then I'd get tired of the barge industry, and I would look for a nice job in the Coast Guard. And they advertised these jobs with so many days, 6 months, 4 months, something like that. And I signed up for another one, and actually had to get an apartment because I was working at district headquarters, and for the chief of the Marine Safety Division. And while I was there, my job was to assess the port access routes for the Gulf of Mexico. Now, in the Gulf, what an access route is like when you're coming out of the Mississippi, there has to be a little lane so that the people can't block that to make access into the Mississippi River. The same thing with every port, Houston, Galveston.
Is it like our channels in the river?
Right. Each one of those has an outlet. So the first thing I did was, they let me do what I wanted to do. I always loved that about the Coast Guard. And so I got a Coast Guard vehicle, and I took off, and I'd stop in each one of these ports, and if they had ships coming in and out, I would get on board a ship with one of the pilots for that area and ride out and ride back in with him. And I did it all the way over to Houston. And after I had done all of them, I went back and I sat down and I looked at a map of the Gulf of Mexico, and it had all these little outlets coming out of each one of these ports. So I sit there with a pencil, and it looked like all of these could be made to join. And I started just extending these routes out to where they all met. And then they had a clear access route going back through the Keys into the Atlantic Ocean. And so anyway, I enjoyed it. And but at the time, I knew I was going to be getting off active duty soon. And I sent in a letter of application to Louisiana State University that was looking for someone to head up a study they was going to be doing for the Coast Guard on vessel traffic systems, and for the purpose of making a vessel traffic system for the New Orleans area. So I started working with them, and came off of active duty. And when I took the job, the first thing I did was got on a plane and flew to Hong Kong. And from there I went to the Hyatt, and next thing you know, I'm on the top floor of the Hyatt looking out over the Hong Kong harbor. All expenses of the Coast Guard through LSU. And so we studied. The next day we rode around the Hong Kong harbor, and it was actually the most amazing place I have ever seen. I've never seen so many boats going in different directions, and each one is so experienced that they miss. They never hit each other. They never have any accidents. And I found out later that their secret was that each person who drove a boat, no matter how small, through the Hong Kong harbor, had to take an examination, and during this examination he had to draw a map of the Hong Kong harbor and showing in all the docks and everything, just like a pilot would on the Mississippi. And it was tremendous. Of course, back then, that was when the British was in control of Hong Kong. So we rode around on this big British yacht, which was kind of nice. But then we came back from there and we went to Japan. And in Japan, spent almost a month in Japan visiting their, they've got a wonderful vessel traffic system in Tokyo Harbor. That the reason it is so successful is they completely control all traffic. And they have like separate channels and one-way traffic in certain areas. No vessels are coming towards each other. They go in one way and come out a different way. And the Japanese are smart. They had a great navy during the war. But anyway, they treated me very nice. And we finally left Japan. I went all over Japan, down the inland sea. I rode on a patrol boat out through with these ship pilots, Japanese ship pilots, and several of them had been captains on Japanese ships during World War II, and it was amazing. You know, the Japanese back then, they would always like cower down to you because, you know, you defeated us, and you know, they were very nice people. Or were, I don't think so during the war, but after the war, when they got over the fanaticism, you know, they were basically good people. And we left there, and then we hit the toughest part of the trip, all paid for by the Coast Guard and members of LSU staff. I was the senior investigative officer on this trip. And the last stop was in Hawaii. And that one was tough to take, man. We go in and went to their vessel traffic system, which was operated by the pilots, and it says, well, how does it work? He says, we only have about one ship going out and one ship going out in a day. He says, so it really, you know, we don't have too much of a problem with them meeting. So I found that to be a very successful vessel traffic system. But anyway, I came back to LSU and spent the next month or so. We developed a couple of things. One was we did a new map of between Baton Rouge and the Gulf of Mexico, showing all the docks and all the harbors and the anchorage areas and the fleets and all of that, which that was a good publication. And then I went out looking, and I found that there was equipment operated by that the Army had, where we could take and put the vessel traffic system in New Orleans, put radars at various points along the river, and we could have those radar pictures brought back in and put it into the computer, and it would develop a computer image of the river and whatever vessels it was picking up. So the system would have the vessels identify themselves, and to make a long story short, the system, well, it was, if you're ever interested in looking at it, it was all written up in a publication that LSU put out for the Coast Guard. And I know that during the study, a couple of times I disagreed with what they was doing.
Okay, Captain, we're going to have to wrap it up. Our time limitations to YouTube is only 10 minutes, so everybody can come back in Volume 7 of River Stories with Captain Harold DeMarrero.